We're doing a different video. Today was supposed to be a video on angels, but I don't feel like talking about angels, and every time I try to talk about angels, it just ends up becoming a long, like 30-minute long explanation of what all the angels are. So I want to talk about where we get the angels, and this is going to be, if you've seen the title, this is part one of what is hopefully a multi-part series of the occult canon in broad strokes. Now, I'm going to mention that the occult canon is all of the books that are important to Western ceremonial magic as a whole. I left out quite a few, which are going to be in part two, or deserve their own videos themselves, or I'm going to be teaching a fucking class on at some point. So those are going to be important. However, that being said, I can't just go over that without showing you my notes, so I'm going to just pop over to me in the future, where I'm going to just record this and we're going to have a wonderful time of listening to me ramble about a lot of different books and how they interlink and why they're important and how the Western occult canon is kind of a fucked mess. So let's get to that. Take it away, future me. Hello, this is recording number 2 because I recorded a 30-minute long video of this and the entirety of it was muted, so I'm going to re-record it now. Hello, this is the ceremonial magic canon in broad strokes. I was going to do a video on angels, but I wanted to take a moment and just look at the dialogue between where we get the angels and how we get a lot of different types of angels. This is by no means an exhaustive list. This is why it's in broad strokes. And notice it says part 1. I don't have things like the Ombre Melon, or the Grimoire Verum, or the Book of Oberon, although that one is less important. I don't have the Greater Key of Solomon. The Lesser Key is on here. But I just want to take this time and I want to go through where we get a lot of the stuff in the ceremonial magic canon, because it's a very bizarre, winding road, and I don't talk much about Kabbalah here, but it will be mentioned. Side note, for those of you who are wondering if I'm going to put the Zohar in part 2, the Zohar is not in ceremonial magic canon. It's not in ceremonial magic canon at fucking all. Don't ask me about it. That being said, this is the part 1, where I'm using these as like the groundwork foundational texts. We will continue, and this will build, and I apologize. So, let's get into it. The first book in the ceremonial magic canon is the Torah. The Torah was completed around 450 to 350 BC, Jewish text that is the source of a lot of angelic magic and practices through Jewish exegesis, which is analysis of scripture. Important, like really important books of the Torah for occultists. The book of Genesis is the most examined book of the Torah, and it is the first one. The book where occultists have done the, quite frankly, insane-looking operations to the text and have gotten entire angelic choirs out of it. Similarly with the book of Exodus. Now, I'm calling ancient Kabbalists here occultists. The reason I'm doing that is because when we cover Agrippa, which I don't actually have in this list, but it's referenced in Agrippa that a lot of the early Kabbalistic teachings are thrown in with Agrippa. So this ends up becoming, like, they get the honorary stamp of, you are an occultist and you aided occultism, even though that's not what you were attempting to do, Mr. Rabbi. The 10 Commandments are a set of 10 laws that God gave to Moses on Mount Sinai. Earliest sightings of overt Kabbalistic influence on the Torah. I want to do an entire video on this. I'm trying to get more direct translations than the KJV. I don't know what that accent was. The KJV, or King James Version. And there is a set of 10 laws that are very clearly Kabbalistic, and if you apply a Kabbalistic lens to them, it causes them to be interpreted very different than what we have as the English translation. So I'm trying to get a better translation of those, because if you go back and you look at what the words mean, the words actually mean very different things in the translations. So the Ten Commandments are a set of Kabbalistic rules that are given one rule per Sephirah to Moses on Mount Sinai. The two most important books in the entirety of this are the Book of Tobit, which is the story of how Tobit went around with the Archangel Raphael, who was in disguise, and had a bunch of adventures. At the end of the book, the demon Asmodeus comes out. And the demon Asmodeus is accosting this woman. And he is accosting this woman. And the reason he's accosting this woman is because what is happening is she is getting married. The husbands are being unfaithful. If I remember correctly, the husbands are being unfaithful because of the demon Asmodeus, and the demon Asmodeus is taking this as carte blanche to kill them because the demon wants to marry the woman. That is not going to happen. So then Tobit goes and he prays to God, and he goes, God, please tell me how I can get rid of this demon, because I want to marry this woman, but I want to be faithful. And then Raphael, being an absolute bro, goes, hey, Tobit, you're pretty cool. You want a method for getting rid of the demon Asmodeus, who is causing these problems? And then he goes, sure. You burn some fish liver, and then the demon Asmodeus cannot stand the smell, and then you command him to get out and never come back. And then he goes, cool, that's cool, but how do you know this? And he goes, oh, that's easy. Shows that he was the angel Raphael the entire time, and just leaves. So Tobit then does the thing that Raphael tells him, gets rid of the demon Asmodeus, he marries the girl, happily ever after. Very nice story. Then, the other important book is the Book of Enoch. The Book of Enoch is the story of the Archangel Metatron. It's the story of Enoch becoming the Archangel Metatron. This is a more modern interpretation, however, it is required in order for a lot of Kabbalistic stuff to, like modern, Western, Hermetic Kabbalah to function properly, so we're going to take that. So, the result of this, Enoch became Metatron, and the souls of those who were carried up with him, but their bodies were left behind. They're now dead, and the souls were turned into lesser angels. This is the story of Enoch becoming Metatron. This is the story, this is the primary core of the story, is Enoch becomes Metatron. The reason this is important is because Enoch becoming Metatron is crucial, because he becomes the Archangel of Kether later in Hermetic Kabbalah. Now, important other notes. In the Talmud, it is explicitly said, Talmud's not on here. I have to reference a bunch of books that aren't on here because the ceremonial magic canon's a bit long. In the Talmud, it is explained that the way that Enoch rose is that he was taken up, and the souls of his followers were taken up with him, but their bodies were found in a pit of snow by people who went out to find out what had happened to Enoch. They were, stuck in a pit of snow. They were frozen, and their souls had been, torn from their bodies by angels, and it was insane. This is not the first time we will hear angels doing incredibly fucked up things. PGM. PGM is the Greek magical papyri. It was written between 100s BC and 400s AD, which stands for Anno Domini, the year of our Lord, not after death, for those of you who don't know Latin. Neither do I, but I know that much. Original source book for a lot of practices that were used throughout history, as well as a lot of the core fundamental, and if there are spelling errors, I don't have spell check on this program, I didn't check, don't worry about it, this is an audio program anyways. Fundamental principles that Magick uses throughout the years. Result, Magick is banned in Rome and various other places throughout the world, as well as a species of bird is literally sacrificed to extinction for a love spell. Allegedly. I could not find it would help if I had that on screen. The bird thing, I could not find an exact, what bird it was, and I didn't want to bother going through. However, we do know that during this time, the value of animal life was seen as being very low, and while somebody mentioned in the last time I talked about the PGM that Stephen Skinner has a book of, what the actual things it means by, the gall of an ox, But the problem is not when it's like, you need the gall of an ox, or you need the eye of newt. The problem is when it outright says you need to sacrifice a chicken, or you need to sacrifice a bird by drowning it, right? That's the problem, and we do know that some people took this literally. Important highlights. The Steel of Jew, which is later turned into the Bornless Rite by Aleister Crowley, and the Steel of Aeon, a ritual similar to the Steel of Jew, but calling upon a spirit known as the Aeon to grant your petition. Now, the reason this is important is because the Steel of Aeon is... The Aeon is a composite entity comprised of all of the entities and the spirits that were around, and theoretically it is a spirit comprised of every other spirit. So you use the Steel of Aeon as a magical phone operator of sorts, if you are old enough to remember what the hell a phone operator is. You use the Steel of Aeon as a magical phone operator, and you use that to learn, like, you call up the Aeon directs you to the spirit that you're trying to find, and that's how that works. So the spirit from the Aeon fulfills your request. Then we have the New Testament. The New Testament is the life and times of Jesus Christ. It recounts the life and times of Jesus Christ, and then is just a bunch of letters by Paul until the book of Revelations, a vision by Saint John the Elder. Now, good news for those of you who don't like the Bible. We only need to care about 6 books. The occultists need to care about 6 books in particular. The 4 Gospels, the original 4 books of the Bible, recounting the life and practices of Jesus Christ from 4 different perspectives. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. It is important to note that you are most likely going to want to focus on John if you focus on any of the Gospels, because it really does rehash a lot of stuff in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And John is the one where it's trying to explicitly explain how Jesus was both God and man. Now, important to note is that John is also the one where it has the outright Kabbalistic, like, occulty beginning of, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. That's important because that is a formula for occult magic in and of itself, and that is the one that allows you to speak things into manifestation. So that is important. We also need to care about the Book of Acts. The Book of Acts is the alleged acts of the apostles of Christ after their death. This is just a really cool book that you should read. Then we get to the Book of Revelations, which we're not going to talk about what is in here until the angelic conversations of Dr. John Dee. We then get to the Corpus Hermeticum. The Corpus Hermeticum is written somewhere between 100 and 300 AD, compiled in the 15th century, a collection of Greek philosophical texts that are later used as the underlining methodology for Western ceremonial magic. For those of you wondering why we call it Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, this is where the Hermetic comes from. Now, this is the origin of the Hermetic monad. The Hermetic monad belief is the belief that God is everything in one. Everything that could be is in God. Now, due to a problem of the sum cannot understand the whole, the sum cannot understand the whole being you can't understand everything. You can't understand, like, everything. You can barely even understand yourself. God is effectively put on this pedestal by the Corpus Hermeticum as being this infinite, all-knowing, omnipotent thing that is completely devoid of human, like, personality, and while, like, it uses very bizarre terms, like, it is the source of all good, but the version of the word good that they're using is the Greek version of the word good, which means it is the source of all natural movement in the universe. There is a section of the Corpus Hermeticum that says that God is so infinite and omnipotent, but is also completely immobile, and this immobility of God is what causes the movement of everything. It also begins with the most insane introduction to a philosophical text that I personally have ever read, where a guy is sitting in a field and then God, or his holy guardian angel, a spirit known as Poemandrius, or the man-shepherd, shows up and gives him a vision of the creation of the universe. And this vision of the creation of the universe leads to an undercurrent of Gnosticism in the occult canon, because the Corpus Hermeticum is, for those of you wondering where the Zohar is, it's not in this, and it would be in section 2 anyways, because these are the core texts. The Corpus Hermeticum is what occultists use in place of the Zohar. This is like the philosophical text that we use instead of the Zohar, because this causes a lot more of our stuff to make sense. It also is the underlining methodology, and it adds the character of Hermes Trismegistus to the occult canon. Hermes Trismegistus, also, which translates to thrice greatest Hermes, is the original creator of astrology, magic, and alchemy. This is a ahistorical figure who it is believed taught every cool and important person in all of history at this time. Hermes Trismegistus, name somebody. Moses, Hermes Trismegistus. Aristotle, Hermes Trismegistus. Ptolemy, I believe that's the one who wrote the Tetrabiblios, which is also not on here, which is where we get modern tropical astrology from. Hermes Trismegistus taught him. Every cool person was taught by Hermes Trismegistus. Now, asterisk. Hermes Trismegistus is likely a pseudonym, or possibly the invoked spirit that inspired the creation of the 3 occult sciences. Hermes Trismegistus is very much an ahistorical figure, and they're not really, they're not real, is the best way to put it. Then we get to the Arbitel of Magick. Oh god, the Arbitel of Magick. Now, the Arbitel, of course. The Arbitel of Magick is originally published in the 1500s in Switzerland, according to Wikipedia, a text that is billed as the first part of I believe it's a 9-book series. The book is filled with how people should practice magic and is very it is overall a very Christian take on magic. It says that it does have some objectifiable things, like, this is the source of the Olympic planetary powers, but it also says that all authority is given by God, which causes some very bizarre mental hiccups when you realize that demons have authority over other demons, and demons have authority over various things, which means that they were given that authority by God, which is in and of itself a nightmare clusterfuck to figure out. So, Arbitel of Magick. The important thing for this is it's where we get the Olympic planetary powers, and it's also got some really interesting aphorisms. Then we have the life and times of Dr. John Dee. Buckle the fuck up. So when I recorded this originally, it took me 10 minutes to just cover Dr. John Dee, and it's probably going to take me another 10 minutes. So, Dr. John Dee was the astrologer to Queen Elizabeth of England. He delineated the exact time to have her coronation to turn England into the British Empire. Conversations with the angels. Okay, this is where we get the Enochian stuff. It's important to know that originally Dr. John Dee had a second scryer that was not Edward Kelly of the Enochian fame. Dr. John Dee asks a bunch of questions which cause the Book of Tobit and the Book of Enoch to become canon. And we know they're canon because the angels outright, directly reference them. And at one point in the diaries of Dr. John Dee tells Raphael he asks the angel Raphael to get rid of a demon that is accosting him, as he did for Tobit. And the Archangel Raphael directly references the Book of Tobit by saying, I didn't do that, I gave Tobit the method, you are just lazy, go get rid of your fucking demon. I gave you the method. So that happens. Dr. John Dee is a little bit chaffed about that, but them over time, we find out that his first scryer, he finds out, is not the most competent, and then he ends up going and getting angelic conversation with the assistance of Edward Kelly. Before this, he was given the 7 penitential psalms method for invoking the Archangel Raphael, or the Archangel Michael. This is the big name. You're going to use this as the occult invocation, big gun invocation for the Archangel Michael. Now, important to note, when he was working with the Sir Edward Kelly, it's Dr. John Dee and Sir Edward Kelly, they developed the entire Enochian system with the help of 4 angels, 2 of which are listed here. The third is listed in the second. The Archangel Michael, the Archangel Raphael, the Enochian angel Nalvij, and the angel Medimi. Now, there's a lot of other angels that are important here, but those are the 4 primary ones for creating the Enochian system. They work on the Enochian system. They talk about the Enochian system. There's a weird wife swap thing that happens. Don't worry about it. It's kind of annoying. Kelly then ends their partnership after the Daughter of Fortitude speech from the angel Medimi, who has been helping them the entire time. This I need to explain. This is a weird point where before this, the angel Medimi had been showing up as like a 10-year-old girl, like a very small child, and they were being led by this angelic-looking child, and they were being led in the visions, and that's what was going on. Whenever Medimi showed up, she showed up as a child. But then the Daughter of Fortitude event happens. The Daughter of Fortitude event happens. Medimi shows up as a fucking absolutely beautiful woman made entirely out of gold and starts lecturing them about how she is the Daughter of Fortitude and how people want her, but they should never lust for her. This either means that she assumed the role of Zoe, who is the Gnostic aeon of life, or she took on the role as being the divine harlot or something from later Thelema. Thelema's not on here. We end before Thelema. She takes on the role as being the angel of life, or the embodiment of all life, and how people should not lust after her. And this is so mentally traumatizing. Because keep in mind, it's important to know that Dr. John Dee had only been doing angelic stuff, but Kelly was doing Goetia on the side. He was doing like conversations with demons on the side. And Edward Kelly has a full-on moment of, demons are less fucking terrifying than this. I am out. And he fucks off. Now, we know that this is where the important thing about the occult canon ends. We know that we have these because they were hidden under Dee's floorboards in the places he was living, and we actually have that some of his papers were actually burned, but a second copy survived. So that really says that this was the will of the angels and God getting this published. From there, we have the Lesser Key of Solomon, which is just 4 books. This is the most popular text attributed to, this is the most popular occult text of all time. I'm not even going to sugarcoat it. Maybe other than the Bible, but that's not really considered an occult text. This is the most definitively considered occult text in the entirety of Western occultism. That is the most popular one. It is a text misattributed to King Solomon. King Solomon, back in the Torah section, I forgot to mention Solomon. King Solomon is the primary protagonist of the Book of Kings. The TLDR on Solomon is that he is an important figure who was given wisdom by God. God let him decide what gift he wanted to give, and Solomon went ahead and said, I want wisdom, because I could ask for money, love, power, but wisdom will get me all of those things. And then God was so overcome with how wonderful his answer was, he proceeded to go, you know what? You could have asked for money, love, and power. I'm going to give you all those things in addition to wisdom. And then Solomon ends up falling, and problems arise because he ends up getting 500 wives, which is a little bit excessive and has to do with a weird interplay between the divine masculine and the divine feminine. Not going to cover that. That is not in the scope of this fucking video. Home stretch, Lesser Key of Solomon. So, in the original version of the myth, Solomon has the has the demons like teach him where to get a magical worm called the Shamir to help build the temple. In later versions, it is outright said that he bound 72 demons and had those fucking demons and their legions build the goddamn temple. Then he proceeded to seal them in the brass vessel, the archetypal brass vessel, seal them in a brass vessel, sealed the brass vessel, chucked the brass vessel into a lake, and the onlookers were horrified because he had just had them build this wonderful temple for God. Clearly we can do good things with them, so they had people literally dive into the lake to go get the vessel. They got the vessel out and they broke the vessel, which is why you're able to evoke the spirits. Otherwise you wouldn't be able to. This is the underlying mechanism behind why the Ars Goetia seems to work. Then there's the Ars Thurgia Goetia, a guide on how to evoke spirits from the compass directions to manipulate people. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, it's mostly to manipulate people. Then there's the Ars Pauline, which is a book on angelic evocation, originally rediscovered by the Apostle Paul. I say allegedly because it's very clearly most likely not. This is just to give credence to the fact that this is a mostly angelic text that if it was attributed to the Apostle Paul, it would be okayed. Gives a very bizarre, by modern standards, method of calling up the angel of your nativity, not the HGA, but there is some weird correlation between them. But in certain versions, you will see it called the HGA for a prayer at the very end. And then there's the Ars Almadel. I have an entire video about the Ars Almadel. It is a method of evoking other angels, specifically the angels of the seasons, tied to the zodiac spirits. This is actually a corruption of a book titled the Ars Almadel, which is an Arabic text that got misattributed to Solomon later on. And it is corrupted. This is like, this is the equivalent, like, this right here is the equivalent of when you've printed a book over and, like, you've printed something, and then you, like, copy it, and then you copy the copy, and then you keep copying the copy, and then somebody has to rewrite it because the copy is, like, caked in black and it looks awful and it is completely illegible. That is what happened with the Ars Almadel. So yeah, this is part one of a broad view of the Western occult canon. I hope this has been of some help to you. I hope you enjoyed my ramblings and hope you had a good day. If you're not having a good day, hope your day gets better. Take it easy and don't fucking use the Ars Almadel. Take care.